Will's not ready.
Hold on, Will's not ready, right?
You don't want to work. We're live. Sorry, Will.
Okay, so Tuesday, March 16th, work session. Looks like we've got a fairly full agenda for the evening. First on the docket is a presentation from Community Housing Initiatives regarding the tax incentive request.
Well, I'll perhaps kick things off. Good evening, everyone. I'm Nick Glue, President of Marion Economic Development Corporation. This is a project where we perhaps put more information than you wanted to know about a project, an exciting project that we're looking at welcoming to the south side of our community down off South 11th Street. And this project was reviewed last week by the Economic Development team, and I've invited Sam Erickson with Community Housing Initiatives to join us to provide a little additional context to the project to supplement the material that you received in your packets and the additional addendum that I provided in your packets as well. Because if you really start digging into these are rather prescribed projects as far as the finances go, all ultimately intended to provide affordable housing opportunities, in this case for seniors in our community. So Sam, with that, welcome to Marion. We're happy to have you here.
Thank you. Thanks, Nick. Thanks all of you. I got a little overzealous, and everybody hates a PowerPoint, I know, but people like pictures. And I think they really give you a good illustration of sort of the work that we've done and what we hope to do in your community. So what you have in front of you is Tulip Tree Apartments, which would be 40 senior, affordable and mixed income housing units. We will have some market rate, we'll have some at a moderate income, and then we'll have some at a very low income. And, you know, without going into too much detail, the reason that we like to mix that blend is if we get that higher rent from our market rate residents, then we can offer some of those 30% or very low income rates, and our market rate just help us pay for the ones where we get to charge less money. So we feel like we get a sort of a broader spectrum of the population. And of course, the units are all mixed in together and nobody knows who anybody is. And it just works really well for us. It's been a great mix. So Nick did a great job of preparing some financial information. I'd love to answer any questions that anybody would have about that. Or I can just talk to you about our community and our organization. We're Iowa's largest nonprofit housing provider. We've been operating since 1994. Actually, the CEO and I started the company back in '94, and we've developed over 1,600 units of housing across Iowa. We manage all our own properties. We take care of our properties and our people. We provide resident services. Right now, during this pandemic, during this time when so many people are suffering, we have actually a 98.5% collection rate in our apartments. And that's because we have a team of people who are committed to helping people stay in their housing, to helping people thrive in their housing. We know that it causes trauma to households and livelihoods and families if they have to leave their homes. So we've been working very hard the last year to sort of keep everyone healthy and keep them in their unit and help them tap into the resources that are available, including teams of people now on vaccine hunter websites trying to make sure all of our seniors are getting their appointments and getting their shots. So the property that we're proposing here in Marion, we're very excited about. It's sort of loosely based on Valley Station, which I included some photos here in the PowerPoint of Valley Station. It's been a really popular design for us. It's 2 bedrooms. A lot of times we like to have a bedroom for a grandchild or for a hobby, or because of health issues, maybe, you know, seniors are living with a sister or relative, or even a spouse who have different sleep habits and sleep hours than they do. So separating those bedrooms and putting a living area in the center is really nice. We also provide a counter that is a nice seatable area with a regular chair. Oh, sorry, I'm just speeding right through this. Yeah, I'm sorry. I will go back to the PowerPoint, taking a look here at the income limits that that we have set up. Like I said, some at that very low unit rent, $440. These are very energy efficient. So we generally see utility, well, you know, of course now utilities have changed a little bit, but we're generally seeing them below $60 for the month. We do include water, sewer, and garbage. So the resident just pays for the heat and electric, which will probably be electric heat in this property. So just be an electric bill. And then we do have for, like I said, at the market rate, which would be that $900 level, a little bit higher rent to help offset some of that deeper rent skewing that we have. Okay, now we can go to this floor plan that we have. As I said, it's been a very, very popular floor plan for us, separating the bedrooms. There's also a nice walk-in laundry room, so they're not walking down the hall to do their laundry. And we do have a counter where they can sit, or if they're in a wheelchair or need assistance, they can roll up. And that also works really well as a computer center to help keep them connected to friends and family, especially important this past year through the internet, through technology, being able to Zoom with grandkids and keep up. So we put electric there and set it up so that they have technology pretty easy at their fingertips. The development cost budget, again, I'll answer questions at the end if you have any. Pretty straightforward. We've, as Nick mentioned, we've got a lot of restrictions on the building materials and the things that we use and how much we can spend per unit, for example, all very tightly prescribed by the Iowa Finance Authority for the low-income housing tax credit. So most of this is very prescribed in how we do it. We've included the sources of financing. We did apply to the Housing Trust Fund. And I think we pulled that off at very last minute, but they were happy. We were the only application that they had for multifamily this year, I believe. So, or large multifamily. So we were very happy that we were able to tap into some of those funds to help the project. And then we do include an operating pro forma here. Some of the things that I like to point out are the resident services. You'll see a line item for that in the budget. It doesn't come close to what we'll spend on resident services, but it is included in there and helps us a little bit offset those costs. And also the fact that we really like to load up those reserves. We're loading up our rent reserves. We're loading up our replacement reserves because we know, there's a life cycle to everything, and we want to make sure that we're planning well for the future and we're replacing items and getting things taken care of as they're needed. And we're not letting things fall into disrepair. In the next slide, you'll see again, this is Valley Station. For those of you who are familiar with Valley Junction in West Des Moines, this was the first affordable housing that was built there in about 20 years, or multifamily housing that had been built there in about 20 years. It's just at the base of Valley Junction. It is all senior. And it's just been a really, really popular design. We don't build identical properties. None of our properties are the same in any of the 30 some communities that we serve, the 56 properties that we do have across the state of Iowa. But this one's been incredibly popular, great layout. So we're gonna give nod to it. And that way I was able to show you just some photos of what it might look like when we're all done. So we've included some community spaces, very important for our seniors to connect and stay active. And then again, as I mentioned, the kitchens with the lower countertops and the in-unit laundry, energy efficient appliances will be all included. Yeah, we've been very successful with the Valley Station one, and I think that it's a good inspiration to start, but we're looking forward to digging in and getting going. But would love any input that you have, any suggestions, recommendations, questions. There's a lot of material here, but I was told don't take too much time. So I would love to answer any questions that you may have.
Thanks, Sam. Any questions? Yeah, Steve.
Yeah, my first question is, I think they referenced information that was sent to us. I did not see anything in my emails nor anything attached to this agenda item. So am I the only one missing something, or is information still to be sent out?
It's a great question. I don't remember seeing anything.
Have you seen it?
No, and I don't even know where the proposed site is.
Yeah, so,
Steve,
We don't-
yeah, we're in the dark right here, Nick. I mean, I see nothing in my files anywhere with anything reference to this project. So she talked about 11th Street, but everything is being talked about is.
So my guess is perhaps how your agenda was built is that it was attached to an item perhaps further on in the agenda and maybe not attached to her presentation item at the beginning, but I'll have to defer to the city manager's staff on how that was provided to you guys.
Okay.
My apologies for the confusion. Just to state though, the site is located, it was a site that was purchased originally by the Views off of South 11th Street between Sinkback, the former Magid building, and then the street that essentially you would use to access Menards. So it would access very similar to how the Views does. There's a very small sliver of property. That's the site that we are referencing.
So is this a new project on that site, Nick? Because if I recall, the assisted living facility west of there had bought that site and is going to do a project on that site.
Yeah, and I don't know if Sam, if you have any perspective on that. You're correct. There was a project at one time that was proposed, but the Views ultimately decided to put the property back on the market. Hence why we're here today.
Okay.
Yeah, Nick, that's what we had been told as well. They decided to not move forward. It was a assisted living. The financing models have changed significantly in the last 4 years, particularly in the state of Iowa. The reimbursement level has become really low. So it's our understanding that they decided not to do the assisted living facility, and they put the land on the market, and we jumped on it right away.
Okay, that makes things a little clearer.
Sorry.
So materials were attached to, under the regular agenda, under administration, there's a project calendar for this item, motion to receive and file the request for financial assistance, and then a motion directing staff. So the project materials were attached to that memo.
I missed that.
Clearly, we all missed it, right? So it wasn't just you. Which one is that? Which item did you
What
say
item
it was?
is that under?
A,
Should be A8 under the regular agenda.
A8.
Might be because I'm trying to open it right now and it's been minutes and it won't open. So I don't know if maybe that's why I didn't get it, because it wouldn't open.
All right.
Okay, so we'll take a look and see and make sure we've got it.
I do have the relevant financials in the PowerPoint too. If you'd like to go just through those pages a little more slowly, we could sure do that too. If everyone's having trouble opening it.
Does anybody else have questions for Sam or Nick today?
No.
Okay, thanks, Sam. Thanks, Nick.
Thanks so much.
Looks like we've got Bob with the Marion YMCA next.
I don't see that he's on the call.
So maybe we'll jump ahead, and if he joins us, we'll come back. Is Brooke available for Uptown Marion report?
I am here.
Oh, good. Welcome, Brooke.
Thank you guys, and thanks for having me. Just wanted to give you guys our report from this last year that we've recently come out with, but just a general overview of the Uptown District. Here's some beautiful pictures of what things look like when we could have events, right? Next slide, please. So the Uptown District, we're a nationally accredited Main Street Iowa district, and our mission is to drive continued revitalization, growth, and preservation of the historic character through our 4 committees of design, promotion, economic vitality, and organization, to improve the Marion community. We were established in 2013. We incorporate 20 plus block districts, about 165 give or take buildings, about 128 businesses, and around 281 residents. This is a map of the district. It really hasn't changed a whole lot since 2013. Some people comment on the funny shape of it. It goes up to incorporate some of the historical features on the north and south ends of our commercial core, and then the two main arteries through the historic downtown area. So a little bit about what Main Street Iowa District means. We're designated through the state, which means we follow the National Main Street Program guidelines, but also state program guidelines, which was developed through the National Main Street Center. So there are over 1,000 Main Street communities in the United States, and there are 54, I think it stayed 54 within the last year, Main Street communities across the state of Iowa, and there are 4 in Lynn County alone, which is the most of any county in the state. So I've updated our numbers of the economic impact since we started as a Main Street district. We've seen $27 million in private investments. That does include building acquisitions, which is what we've seen a lot of in the most recent years, rehabilitations, and new construction projects. We did receive an award for hitting that $20 million mark through Main Street Iowa in the last year. But with a lot of new projects, including the library, Broad and Main, the streetscape, we're going to hit quite a few of those milestones in the next few years, seeing as much development as we are. We've received about $960,000 in state grants, and about $350,000 of that was an Art Place America grant for the Uptown Artway. We've seen 107 business starts and expansions and about 10.5 thousand volunteer hours. This past year, we've had about 15 new businesses in the district. You can see how those are kind of broken out here. So we're always getting new businesses. We had a really strong start this last year, and then it kind of trickled off towards the end of the year because of the pandemic and derecho. But what we're seeing is we're still seeing people inquire about spaces in the Uptown District, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in the following slides. So there's a sheet that we've included. It should be in your packet. If not, I can email it to you. It's the one featured on the right there. That includes all of our accomplishments this past year, but just to highlight a few, we assisted businesses navigating a lot of the COVID-19 issues and resources that were out there. We assisted businesses with derecho recovery. We received a $75,000 challenge grant for the Monuments Building, which is where Friday will go into. We received the National ARP grant for the senior trikes that you guys have seen. Assisted with city staff with master planning and the streetscape plans, reimagined community events this last year, and created some toolkits for current and future businesses in Marion. Our leadership this year, Nikki Kettlecamp will be finishing out this year through September. And then we have Jamie Henley, who's the owner of Giving Tree Theater, who will be stepping into our leadership role in September. I've heard a lot about people questioning the vacancies in Uptown, so I just wanted to address that through this presentation. I know sometimes we get some people that say, oh, Uptown's looking so vacant, and worried that Uptown is on a downward trend, which would be expected after the past year we've had, but I want to tell you that that is not the case. You can't read this, but just wanted to show you, these are a list of the vacancies in our Uptown, which 28, that does seem like a lot, but 5 of those are first floor vacancies that are on the market. There are 19 in yellow that are storefronts under redevelopment or derecho repairs and are currently not on the market. In the dark green, you'll see those are second floor and basement units that are available. And then in red are some that are questioned whether they're vacant or not, or perpetually vacant. So those we might want to look at closer. But what I want to get across for this slide is that we do have a lot of vacancies, but it's from growth and it's from projects turning over. And so that's a positive thing in my mind. What we do need to be careful of is that these projects don't last longer than they need to be, because that's where we can really run into trouble of the economics of empty storefronts. Main Street Iowa has done some research into what that cost is. It's around $425,000 per year per vacant storefront that we're losing in economics in the district. And that doesn't include what the community as a whole loses in vibrancy on top of that. So we really want to make sure that we're keeping these projects moving. I know that's difficult with construction costs and also finding labor, but that's going to be really important to keep an eye on to keep things rolling in Uptown. So one of the things we did that I presented on last year was a market studies and strategies program through Main Street Iowa. We came out with some really great results through that program. We did a consumer and business survey. We discussed the results of that survey, and then we created some marketing strategies. Typically, this program is followed by the Ready to Recruit on the next slide. So they let us do that the following year. And through that program, we did another market review and we identified some top prospects, prospective businesses that could go into the district to maybe fill some of those gaps of the redevelopment spaces that we plan to see coming. And then lastly, we had a recruitment test. So we had somebody come to the district and pretend like they were looking for a space, which actually this is actually a developer that comes. So sometimes it's serious, sometimes not so serious. But we had him come and we did this test and we passed the test with flying colors. But we got some really great feedback from that of how we market Marion to people coming to the district or people looking to open a business. And one thing that came out of that, I created this business investment guide to Marion, which the mayor has asked me to show you a sneak preview of today. This is the front page of that guide. It starts with a welcome letter from the mayor and then dives into 8 reasons why people should invest in Marion or bring their business to Marion. Next slide. These next couple of pages really talk about the market and our demographics. Who are the residents of Marion? Where do they spend their money is where these pages really lead into those conversations. Next, I talk a lot about development projects going on to show that there's growth and there's momentum and there's excitement in Marion. And to prove that point, I've listed quite a few redevelopment projects that are showing that growth here on these 2 pages. Next, we have financing and incentives. So these are a lot of the incentives that we use when there's someone looking for those. On the right are specific to Uptown incentives, but this really just scratches the surface. And we encourage anyone to reach out to Nick or myself to see a deeper dive into what financial incentives would best fit a certain development project. And then we dive into location. So we have an interesting location. We have the Marion Enterprise Center. We are close to 2 airports, which can be a great selling point. And then on the right, there's a map that's listed the available properties and how they align with the other retail and other sectors in the district. This is the middle of the book, which is what you automatically flip open to. So that's why this is in the middle. This is our team that will work with a business that wants to come to Marion. And then on the right, we list the partners that we often connect them with if they have other questions, such as Main Street Iowa staff or the SBDC, SBA, SCORE, and even our regional partners. A lot of times the first questions they ask is, who do I call to hook up my water, electric? What's your gas company in town? So this page is really important when people want to take that next step towards opening a business. It really includes those contacts that they need to know. Who do I call for zoning? That sort of thing. And then we dive into the right, which has a little bit of information on the schools and community promise. Another question we get is questions about our culture and what goes on in Marion during the summer months and through the rest of the year. So we've included generally what our event schedule would look like in a typical year. with no dates, but just so they can browse to see what's going on and where it's going on at. And then lastly, to just hit it home, this page really makes the case for why Marion. What's special about our community that is important for people to know. There's a little note on the end about how resilient our community has been this last year, which I think we can all speak to. But this page, these couple of pages really have some great points of why Marion. So that's the booklet. I'd be happy to answer any questions. There's a couple of edits I need to make. I think I need to update some headshots and rename the Squaw Creek Crossing redevelopment in this book, but I'm happy to get you guys the final draft if you want to use this to help market our community. And then I'd take any questions you guys might have.
Thanks, Brooke. Questions? Okay, it looks like we don't have any questions. It looks like a great booklet. I'm excited to see it when it's completed.
Thank you.
Okay, did Bob join us yet?
I think he's trying, so he's not on yet though. So I don't know if
All right,
Mike
we'll
wants to
keep
go
moving
first.
ahead. Looks like urban forest annual update.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for the time tonight. I'm happy to have some time to come up and talk about our urban forestry division and where we're at today. My name is Mike Simprich. I'm the arborist with the City of Marion Parks Department. For those of you who maybe haven't seen me without a mask on lately. It's been an incredible 6 months since the trade show. We're actually nearing 7-month timeline now. And there's been a lot going on, especially related to urban forestry. Many things have been gained, but there's been many things lost as well throughout the process. I'm confident that we've been moving forward productively in many ways though. Among all the infrastructure that was impacted, our urban forest was hit hard. And what we do now and in the years forthcoming will set the stage for our future canopy. We have a very unique opportunity though to work forward and promote the healthiest tree canopy and quality and diversity for generations to come. Under storm response, this is a short quote here: persistence and resilience only come having been given the chance to work through difficult problems. We certainly have had plenty of those over the last 6 months, and I'm pretty satisfied personally with how we've worked through things and how we continue to move forward. Some numbers for today, and in reference to public trees. When I refer to public trees, I'm speaking specifically to the trees that are located in our park systems, green spaces, and right-of-way or street-side parking areas. Prior to the storm, I catch myself saying that a lot nowadays: before the storm this, before the storm that. But we'll always be looking back at what things were like before, as well as focusing on moving forward. Before the storm, we had identified 6,387 trees in our public inventory. Through the process of many initial assessments, we identified that there was 2,648, or approximately 41% of the canopy that was lost. This means that either the tree was a complete loss, or based on canopy damage percentages or severity, it was required to complete a full removal of that tree. And then following that initial assessment and a lot of work that's been going on over the last 6 months, we're somewhere around that 3,700 inventory. We're still completing a final verification assessment. No inventory is ever complete, because as soon as you think you've got everything updated, something changes, whether it's a removal or a new planting. And so we will continue to move forward and assess those things going on, but those are the numbers we have currently. And then not to be forgotten, With all those removals, there's also stumps left over in the right of way and then those public spaces as well. And so that number coincides with the total loss currently. We do expect that number to expand as we verify more of the locations, simply because there are areas where human error plays in. There's trees that maybe we missed in the inventory. There's also trees that maybe we identified as salvageable that somewhere along the lines, the removal process, either a private owner or a contractor made a mistake or something, and there's going to be trees missing that maybe we didn't anticipate removals on. So as far as cost estimates go, looking at replacement costs with that 2,600 number for trees that we know are complete loss or removed, at approximately $150 tree cost, we're looking at just shy of $400,000. It's important to note that this only includes the replacement cost for the tree that's going back in. This is typically a 1 to 2 inch caliper tree and is a lot different as far as value that provides back to the community in regards to the mature trees that we lost in our canopy. On average, any one given tree can provide thousands of dollars worth of benefits over the course of its lifetime. And it will take a long time to get back to the condition that those trees were in that we lost. Some long-term considerations that we're looking at. First season stress and response. The timeline with the storm was in August last year. Typically towards late summer, fall, trees are moving into more of a dormant stage. So there was not a lot of growing season left following the storm for the trees to respond that are still remaining in the canopy or in the community. So what we anticipate to see this year, and in seasons coming, growing seasons coming, is that there's going to be some increased canopy decline based on stress response to the storm and additional mortality of trees in the urban community. We're looking at the inventory to analyze it in different ways, not just to look at numbers of losses and available planting spaces, but we can also look at the species of the trees that were maybe at a higher mortality rate, and in retrospect, the species that maybe were more resilient to the storm damage, and better plan our planting strategies as we go forward. We're also looking at divisional needs for forestry. There's going to be some swing in priority and overall work initiatives. And so we're looking at what we need to continue moving forward with our goals. Identifying goals is another thing that we're looking at as part of that. Not just goals for the division, goals for the community, goals for planting as we move forward. We've been kind of talking or speaking to a 5-year program, but I certainly anticipate this requiring more than 5 years to follow through and properly address a lot of the things that we'd like to see improve along with replacement for the canopy lost. And then lastly, community canopy percentages. Since long before the storm, we knew urban forestry wise that we've been trying to increase the overall community canopy percentage. It's certainly going to be more of a challenge now, but it's very important to identify that we're not only just trying to replace trees that were lost as a result of storm damage, but that we want to replace those trees and then continue to increase that overall community canopy across the community. Another consideration that comes into play is stumps. A lot of the immediate hazard in the public right-of-ways has been addressed with recovery and response and cleanup, but we're still finalizing the verification assessment, and we know that we've got upwards of 2,600 stumps in the right-of-way and parks that need to be removed. There's going to be more, as I mentioned before, because there's things that we just can't account for and some error in operations. But overall, stump removal's not FEMA reimbursable. Once the hazard in the right-of-way has been mitigated by either removal of the branch or the tree itself, the stump is no longer an immediate risk. And so unfortunately, there is no public assistance reimbursement available for the stump removal process, with a very fine exception. Certain stumps that were uprooted and exposed more than 50% of the root ball did qualify for removal under FEMA contract. But that leaves a very large majority of the stumps remaining in the right of way. The process could take a while. We're looking at time and cost-effective options to try and make that as efficient as possible moving forward. We've already begun removing stumps in certain areas, park spaces particularly, where we're a little better equipped to work through them with our personal equipment. And they're also a little more closer in vicinity to each other, so we can work through more efficiently on those. The main thing to remember is they're not aesthetically pleasing in the public setting. I'm getting plenty of calls consistently about what the plan is for these. And then lastly, where a stump is, we can't necessarily replant a new tree yet either. And so there are priorities, and I want to emphasize replanting this year, but there are still things we need to take care of in the response stage as well to completely address the issue. Lastly, I just wanted to point out the reason we're still currently working on the verification assessment. We began last fall. We worked diligently into December, and we got to a point where snowpack just made it impossible to identify stumps in the right of way. And so we quickly picked that process up again a week ago. Another cost estimate here, but for stump removals, a majority of the tree population in our community was on average 24-inch diameter trees as far as mature trees go. And an average stump removal cost is about 4 inches per diameter inch. That comes out to a $96 cost for one 24-inch tree. And then looking at the 2,600 stump number, we're somewhere just under $300,000. Again, there's cleanup process that follows with this, and that cost estimate does not include backfilling with black dirt and restoration of the right-of-way areas where we'll be removing those stumps to leave ourselves with a site that is suitable for a tree planting moving forward. With all the considerations and pros and cons of storm response, there are some silver linings that come along with this. Many existing public hazards have been completely eliminated. It's pretty hard to assess trees because we can't see inside them, and we can't predict things that aren't visually identifiable on the outside. And so with every tree in the public space, there is some percentage of risk that comes along with it. Because of the storm and the severity of it, it has pretty much swept across the Marion landscape and taken a lot of those weaker links, so to say, and removed them from our public spaces. So we do have somewhat, from one perspective, a safer right-of-way or urban canopy in our public spaces currently. There will be things that develop over time that will need to be addressed again, but there are things that may have been out there that we could have been completely unaware of that no longer exist. The other thing that I mentioned before is it's a very unique situation we're in. It's not very often that a municipal forester has the opportunity to design and execute a reforestation project of this size or scope. We've learned many things in regards to urban forestry over the past 30 or 50 years, and the science and statistics backing everything are continually ongoing, and we're probably in a better position now than we were 30 or 50 years ago to replant a community because of the things we've learned related to invasive pests and species that are more adaptable to different urban sites and concerns that come along with urban trees. I myself think there's an extremely heightened urban canopy awareness. Again, I've spoken to many people over the phone over the past 6 months and visited with residents in detail and depth about trees. Now is the best time to start working on communicating with people, especially while that awareness is avid, and we can capitalize on that moving forward with our initiatives in the years to come to make sure we get the best out of what we can do for replanting and restoration. Majority of tree losses were related to species with softwood, weak structural form, and prone to failure caused by inclement weather conditions. The point of this bullet point is that a lot of these trees may no longer be allowed in our approved tree listing, or we may have learned over time that they're less desirable because of these weaknesses or failures. And so again, with the storm coming through and eliminating a lot of those concerns, we can move forward and build on a stronger base with our urban forestry population and species selection. And then lastly, we significantly reduced our public ash tree population. This has been a priority for urban forestry over the last few years. And from a positive standpoint, the storm came through and helped reduce that population to take some of the emphasis off of that work task so that we can focus on new things coming. Next slide, please. Division priorities. Society grows great when old men plant trees in whose shade they know they shall never sit. That's just a quote that I think means a lot with the situation we're in right now. Considering our urban canopy and moving forward, we want to be sure that we're not planting things that solve our problems necessarily today, but we want to look at how that tree is going to support and bring benefits to our community years down the road. On the topic of emerald ash borer, we currently, before the storm, had about 400 trees in the public population. Currently now, following the storm, that's been reduced to about 75. We'll have a better number on that once we verify some more. We're coming across some that weren't in our inventory, but a majority of those remaining numbers are located in open parks and green spaces where we were treating trees that were significant. And so there may be the potential to leave them in place for some time longer. We'll also be coming around our second cycle for treatment of ash trees. And through that process, we do a reassessment every 2 years on those trees that were deemed significant. And through that process this spring, we'll be able to look and see what trees still meet those significant criteria, whether we're going to continue treatment on those, and whether there's still any hazards remaining in those green spaces. Next slide, please. General tree maintenance is something that I look forward to having a strong emphasis on in new divisional initiatives. Starting a proactive maintenance program focusing on urban health is going to be big. What you'll see coming forward with this idea is that we'll have a rotating quadrant system in place where you'll see active work on every single tree in the public right-of-way over the course of about a 3 to 5 year cycle. This means more frequent attention to heavier traffic roadways, including pedestrian areas, and more preventive work to address clearance concerns before they arise. In the past, typically with the other priorities on our plate in urban forestry, we respond very quickly to public concerns such as those, but it has been more of a reactionary process. And so with some proactive work, we can work on eliminating those things before they become an issue or they need to be called in. And then lastly, there'll be a huge emphasis on working with young trees in establishment, training, and care. The best time to promote a healthy tree is in the first 5 years of its establishment, to train it and give it the proper structure through pruning. And so with the large number of reforestation that we'll be working through, we'll also be focusing a hard amount of attention on promoting these trees' health. Some of the policies and programs that we're looking into, we'd like to explore building out city requirements to support urban forestry and public tree canopy. This means looking into new development requirements for right-of-way trees, tree preservation and acceptance standards for new development, and guidance to select more diverse species selections for developers. One of the largest untapped tools we have to increase our overall community canopy is new developments, especially in our community where it's growing at the rate that it is. We don't currently require right-of-way trees in new developments, and we need to change that moving forward so that we can take some of the burden off of that reforestation off of the city. The maintenance and the care moving forward will be ours, but with the priority to focus on areas more historic to the city and more mature, there's definitely an emphasis to see partnerships with developers and change in ordinance to bring in a requirement for right-of-way trees. We'd also like to provide some publicly accessible inventory and reporting for residents. This would be something similar to the GIS system we're using for our inventory, but on a public platform where a resident could log in and either report a concern about a maintenance need, or simply just to identify what type of canopy they have on their private property to give us a better idea of what type of canopy we have in the community overall. And then lastly, providing incentives for private property plantings. For every right-of-way tree we have in the community, there's the potential for 2 to 3 trees on the private property behind that right-of-way tree. And so creating incentives and promoting private property plantings of good species selection and full canopy trees is another tool that we can utilize to bring some ownership in with residents and also grow that community canopy in a way that we can't require or don't have direct connection to. Public outreach is something you'll see a lot of moving forward. We've been ramping this up over the years with urban forestry, but with a larger emphasis and awareness of urban forestry now, I think it's another good time to capitalize on this. I've had a huge amount of outreach from the public calling in, looking for directions on tree availability, proper planting directions, tree care directions, what to do with trees that are still existing following the storm, and so forth. And so we've really been putting a lot of effort into building out what we have as far as references at the public's expense to go and find those answers on our website primarily. But we're also looking to partner with other organizations and create hands-on demonstrations and workshops where people can come out and see it firsthand and hear it directly from our staff. We're also looking for opportunities for residents to share their tree pride. I'm proud of the trees in my yard. I think most people are. What's left following the storm, there's certainly people that are going to be proud to replant as we go into the planting season this year. And so I think looking for an opportunity for people to share that, whether it be on social media or somewhere on the website where they can push input to us that we can also share on a public level, is a great opportunity to engage the public and show our support in the urban canopy. Reforestation. We've been talking about it, but let's talk about it some more. That's going to be something you're going to see and hear for the next years to come. Unfortunately, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The next best time is now. It takes time for trees to develop their canopy and the value and benefits they can provide back to the community. And so it's not a short-term goal, it's a long-term goal ultimately. But we can take many steps to make sure that we promote the best canopy moving forward. Some of the new programs and initiatives that you'll see coming this year. We have partnered with Monarch Research Project and their Planting Forward initiative. They've made approximately 500 trees available to us for a giveaway, with the incentive or with the idea behind that being that we increase planting on private property in the Marion, Lynn County area. And so they targeted us here in Marion to focus on that Marion population. We've already started this program. Many of you may have seen that there was the opportunity for an internal tree request where you could select up to 3 trees in agreement to promote the survivability of that tree, as well as gifting one to somebody that you may know that was affected by the storm. We're also using a percentage of those trees in an equity initiative that we're moving forward with here in the coming weeks. We look to identify high density, low income neighborhoods where there was more severe storm damage and then target those private owners in the same way to utilize the same program outline where they can plant those trees free of cost on their own property or gift them to somebody they know that may be able to utilize them. Along with this program, there's going to be buckets, 5-gallon buckets available with directions and extensive outreach on how to do the appropriate watering and early tree care, because it's not just enough to plant a tree. We also need to ensure that that tree is going to survive and develop into something better years down the road. Next slide, please. Another program that we're working on is with Trees Forever here locally. We're calling it the Relief Program. This is probably familiar. They've been doing it. They were able to get something going early on last year in Cedar Rapids, and they're also partnering with many of the other local communities to do so. This will include an adoption program where we'll have 600 trees available to anyone in the general public based on registration. First come, first serve. These trees will have a cost related to them, but they will be extremely below wholesale cost. And this program will also include a watering bucket and planting tree care information. Another portion of that relief program is going to be a celebration kickoff planting project that we're going to do on 8th Avenue. This is scheduled for April 22nd. We'll have more specific time and details to come, but we're looking to target a portion of 8th Avenue between 12th and 22nd Street that historically has kind of been an over canopied corridor. Unfortunately, most of the trees in that corridor were the same maturity and fell the same fate following the storm results. And so we're looking to go into that area and plant 35 trees this April, and then pending more stump removal, we'll be able to add additional canopy in there. We'll be doing this throughout the community over the course of this year and years to come, where we'll be targeting areas that we know were hit more severely due to storm damage. I do want to invite the council and mayor to attend that event if possible. It will be starting late in the afternoon that day prior to the council regular session. And we'll have a formal invite going out as soon as we have a hard time set on that. Next slide, please. Some of the continued planting projects that we're working on, we have a lot of things going on, and we're really focusing on planting this year. We have a memorial tree program that's been very active and growing in popularity over the last few years. On average, between a spring and fall cycle, we're planting about 12 to 15 trees a year. Alliant Energy Branching Out is a grant program that we typically have been funded in past years. I just received the award letter for this last week, and due to storm response and our guided intentions to use the funding solely to replace and replant due to storm response, we were awarded $8,500 for this year. Mid-American Energy Grant is another program available to purchase trees and utilize them in public spaces. We have not received our award letter from them, but it is very typical that we get funding from this program as well. We are also looking at our right-of-way ash replacement program. We started this last year due to years prior, working diligently to reduce that ash population in the right-of-way. We're trying to honor the tree replacements that we had identified up to the point of the storm last year, so that we're not losing sight of those replacement locations in the full spectrum of the overall community. Those people or those residences where we removed those ash trees were communicated at the time that they would receive a replacement within 2 years. And so we are looking to work through the remainder of that list either this year or by next spring. And then some of the scheduled spring projects that we had on the roster last year that simply just got delayed or postponed due to storm response priorities is Low Maintenance Building Addition project that will go in near the south parking lot and the maintenance addition out there. Allow South Entrance and Parking Lot planting project. We planted around the playground a few years ago once it was officially open, but we never had time to address the full entrance and parking area out there. We also installed a new pavilion at Linninger Park that we had some funding available to add plantings to that park site, as well as the Hannah Park Fitness Trail extension that we'll be planting around. Next slide, please. Some of the budgetary shifts moving forward that you can expect to see. Overall, for the fiscal year 21-22, there was not an immediate increase noticeable necessarily as far as the total goes, but we did relocate specific funds in certain line items to provide for support on more initiatives and priorities coming in the next year. You notice a moderate decrease in contractual services, primarily because so much tree loss took place this year. There's going to be a low income of tree concerns that are outside of what we can handle with our means. And then a moderate decrease in forestry maintenance supplies, simply because the reduced ash population, we will not need as much chemical to do the treatments that we had been prior to the storm. And then lastly, in response to those small decreases, you'll see a significant increase in our tree funding line item. My last quote here is from the Lorax. It's one of my favorites. And I'd like to open it up for questions if anybody has any right now.
Thanks, Mike. Yes, go ahead.
Mike, thank you very much. I first of all would like to thank you for you and your staff's continued efforts. It's been amazing. You will probably continue to see a continuance of this storm for years to come, and it'll be affected obviously on the canopy. I've got 4 quick comments here as they're related to this. Just some of the information that we're trying to get back to the residents of our community that I think are coming up. And if you could just answer these in general, I know they may be drill down questions, but these are ones that I'm constantly taking questions on and kind of trying to defer them until we had this opportunity. So
great.
One of the first questions I had was, for example, if a resident had 2 trees in the right of way, will they anticipate in the future 2 trees replaced? Will that be up to the resident to decide if a tree is replaced at all? Will it be 1 tree? Can you just give us a little bit of a quick, maybe we're going to review that on a case-by-case basis, but just can we give something to give back to our constituents about that?
Yep, absolutely. It will be reviewed on a case-by-case basis. There are many places where 2 trees belong where they were lost, but there are also many places where they may have been not within the spacing that we've specified in our arboricultural specifications. And so we'll be reassessing every single site before we replant to try and properly space things as we move forward. It does come down to small details such as species selection. We certainly try to promote 40+ foot spacing for large canopy or full canopy trees. But when you get into different varieties that are smaller, more ornamental, we can be more flexible with that spacing guideline and allow more trees in certain spaces.
Great, thank you. And that was a great segue into my next question. That was, for an example, if there was a tree that was 50 feet high and 40 to 50 feet in canopy size, do we anticipate going back to that in the right of way? I know we've kind of have some guidelines on the right of way trees that the residents can plant today. Will we see shorter trees and smaller canopies just because of that limited space, or can you comment on that?
Again, it's really a case-by-case placement. We refer to Right Tree, Right Place, which is kind of a publication put forward by Arbor Day in conjunction with utility companies. Overhead utilities probably limit our planting spatially more than anything. Typically it's that or other infrastructure. We get the most bang for our buck as far as benefits and values go with large canopy trees. More stormwater uptake, carbon sequestration, oxygen production, all those things are in greater percentiles when we have larger scale trees. But there are certainly locations in town that do not facilitate that size of tree. And so going forward, the focus will be to plant the right tree in the right place. And if there's not a right place, we will not plant a tree. But I would lean towards full canopy trees everywhere that we can, where the space is suitable for it.
Sure, great, thank you. And I kind of explained that as well. I kind of had mentioned we have a lot of cul-de-sacs in our older developments on the south side of 7th Avenue, and I would suspect that we would probably be going to the smaller canopies just because of the condensed areas in that area there. One of the other questions that was coming back is the soils in our community are drastically different. We got some areas that are very rich black soil. We got some areas that are very sandy soil. We've got some areas, my neighborhood, you can go down about 10 inches and it's just pure clay. Would there ever be an opportunity where the citizens could bring in some type of soil sample, or where they can take soil samples to find out what tree species really would grow in that type of soil environment?
There is an option available for that, not through the city or Parks Department necessarily, but the Iowa State University Extension or the Lynn County Extension does have soil sample kits that they provide for free, where you can take a sample anywhere in your yard or a collection of locations in your yard and combine them and submit them back in. And for a small fee, they will analyze the soil sample and give you a breakdown, which then you can cross-reference with trees and their soil tolerances, and very, very well identify a species that will successfully establish in that area.
Great, thank you. My final one is more of a comment than a question, and that is I've heard over and over citizens that have called in, and I'm not sure who they're talking to, and nor do they, but they have been overwhelmingly very excited and appreciative of the individual that's taking the time to thoroughly explain this to them. The elderly residents really appreciate the actual time that's being given to them on the telephone. So again, thank you to you and your staff and whoever it is that's answering these questions for people. They feel like their voices are being heard, and they appreciate that time. So I wanted to pass that along. So
I appreciate that very much. That's wonderful to hear. And it's a priority of mine to make sure that we take care of those things.
Thank you very much.
Other questions? Steve? Oh, go ahead, Grant, or Steve?
Okay,
Steve.
so yeah, first of all, you outlined a tremendous number of initiatives. But the one thing I would recommend is in our next city newsletter that comes out, is that you cover some of these key areas in that newsletter. I mean, you could probably fill up the entire newsletter with what you communicated tonight. But one thing, I mean, there's going to be a lot of people planting their trees in their own area, in their own yards, myself included. So you talked about, made reference to what species of tree you're going to recommend, and maybe what species of trees that should not be planted going forward. So I think that's important information. But the key one is talking about the stumps. And I know the city has a stump grinder. You can only do so many in a day, but I had anticipated, I've had some questions about stumps already, and as it warms up, people are outside. I anticipate more questions about when are these stumps going to be taken care of. So again, going forward in that newsletter, or some other way to communicate what your plan is. And the fact that you said it's going to take a number of years does not surprise me, but maybe what your plan is, what part of the city you're going to start in, how you're going to manage that. Give people some realistic expectations about these stumps. So to me, that is, I think your group did a tremendous job last fall. The city looked great after the trade show, as good as it could. But I mean, as far as cleaning trees up, did a wonderful job with that. And now everybody's got stumps in their yard to clean up in the right of way. So I think if you can help with some of that, whatever your planning is, maybe you're not done with it or ready to communicate that, but you're probably going to be pretty close to that, once April comes. And I think that's a key communication thing that people need to understand what's going on there.
That is completely accurate. My response would be that we've already seen an uptick here in the last week or two with a change in weather trends a little bit, or back and forth anyway. We really were waiting till we had that last verification assessment complete so that we could look at the hard numbers before we wanted to push any information out. But I do anticipate something coming out very soon. And by that, I mean before April, more than likely.
Good.
But thank you for the recommendation.
Grant?
Mike, I want to echo the prior comments, thanking you and your team for the incredible work that you've done post derecho. I have one question and then one additional comment. I think you said that for the public areas, we lost approximately 41% of our tree canopy. Do you expect that that's a similar level of loss on private property?
Yes, I would anticipate the same. The percentage would carry across, I believe, but the actual number of trees would probably be 2 to 3 times what it is in the right of way, simply because of that higher density of planting in or on private property.
Okay, all right. So my comment would be this, and your presentation really drove this home for me. It occurs to me that you're responsible for the city's largest garden with the city's largest plants. And that's quite a distinction because it is so visible and so vital to our community value. So once again, just thanks for your work.
Thank you very much.
Okay, any other questions?
I had one last slide on there, Terrell, with my contact information, but I think most everybody knows how to get a hold of me.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, I think we have Bob with the YMCA with us, right?
I am here.
All right, welcome, Bob.
Thank you all for having me. I almost blew this. Rachel, thank you for sending that link back out again because something happened on the first go around. Appreciate you all taking a few minutes. I won't take a lot of your time, but thought it would be helpful to update you all regarding how things are going with the new Marion YMCA and Rec Center that we have all been so anticipating and waiting for. As you know, we opened the doors on January 18th. We actually started with our membership special and taking registrations just after the first of the year on January 4th. And since then, I'm very, very pleased and unbelievably happy to report that we have just over 1,600 new units. That's new units, which is absolutely unprecedented from the standpoint of opening a YMCA, especially in a pandemic. So we are well beyond our numbers that we've dreamed about in our pro forma. And it's been an absolutely wonderful support as we've moved through this. It just shows how needed and how important this new facility will be for the community and for our region for years and years to come. So that represents probably about 4,000 new people, which actually puts us beyond our downtown location, the Helen G. Nassif YMCA, in terms of numbers of members. So obviously the pandemic has really hurt us a lot in some of our existing facilities, and that's including the downtown YMCA. But I'll tell you, this new building in Marion, opening it when we did, and being on time and under budget through a pandemic and a derecho, and opening this building is a real beacon of hope for us as we move forward. So the membership is being hugely supported from kids to seniors. It blows my mind the amount of seniors that we're already seeing as well, taking part in the classes and the Silver Sneakers classes and all of that. So it's a great representation of the community and the numbers and ages and in the diversity of people we're seeing in the building. So that's been great. We with the city of Marion have agreed to have unlimited guest passes. We are not doing that yet, just because of the sheer vast numbers of people that we're not sure we can handle in a social distancing aspect yet. As we start seeing the pandemic wane and vaccinations and things that are helping us go the other direction, we'll readdress that, because we're committed to that. I guess what also is just an amazing sight is if you go in the building at after 4 o'clock or when the you can see the students start walking down from school. I was in there about 1:30 the other day, and Linmar had an early out, and you looked up and there was just like 3 waves of about 100 kids coming into the neighborhood, coming towards the Y. I thought, you know, half of them are probably just walking home or something because of the residential there, but every one of those kids came in the Y. And so it does my heart good to see this place being used, especially by the students, because they've been looking for a place to go for a long time, right? And they now have it, and it's a healthy, great environment for them to be in rather than playing Xbox, or I don't know what they all were doing before they got to the Y, but they certainly are there now. And that's a great, great thing to see. We're working on our programming. As Seth can tell you, we've had a great relationship starting with the city rec department to start working with our programs. Seth can fill in if I missed something, but we decided to kind of take it as it goes and work with it as we go. And our staff are working together well. We're figuring out the programs and when we can start operating them, and we can do it safely, and making sure that we're doing that in this world that we live in right now. But it's almost, I've told a lot of people, it's almost better that we started, you know, who wants to be in this pandemic any longer, but at least it's given us the ability to start it and do it right and take care of those, you know, in a smaller way, because I can't imagine what would have happened if we would have opened this up and there was no pandemic. It's astounding numbers that we're seeing. We do not have our child watch area open yet. That's, if you go in the building, that's the first building, or the first, excuse me, room on the left. We're very close to doing that. That's where you drop your child off when you come into exercise, the younger kids. So we're utilizing that room for other things with like classes and things of that nature yet. The swimming pool has been a big challenge with the reservations for that. We now have opened up for 2 participants in a lane. You can circle swim and stay away from one another as you're doing. And that's helped us a lot with trying to get those reservations in as much as we can. It was a tough struggle at first, and we're kind of working the bugs out of that system. And then you can also reserve the recreational pool. Families are reserving that for 45 minutes, I believe that the time is, and that's also going very well, and things are working out great there. So I guess I'm going to stop talking and answer questions if you have them. As the staff have been working very hard, we have the essential staff in the building that we need to operate it. We're doing everything we can to keep people safe and socially distanced. It's a nice size facility, so people do feel safe. They're cleaning up after themselves. We're cleaning, we're disinfecting all the time. And I'm very happy with, you know, the start of the operation and how it's moving forward. We're not perfect. We got a lot of bugs to work out. It's a big operation. It's going to take us some time to work all those kinks out. Even with the new building, you have leaks in the roof and in the wall. I mean, you just have all of those things. So the staff are just working very hard to check them off the list and make sure we all go forward and we're safe and taking care of as many people as we can. So I probably have forgotten some things. I did not want to take a large amount of your time. I just wanted to thank you all again for your support. We couldn't have done this if we weren't doing it together. There's no way. Seth and I talk about it all the time. It's going to be a perfect relationship as we move forward. We are going to be, I already have talked to the Toledo YMCA in Sylvania. They're going to do a very similar project to what we've done here. And they're very inspired by seeing this, how it came together and how our city, you know, stepped forward and really realized that this was going to be a great place and do it right the first time and partner to make it happen. So this facility it's revered already across certainly Iowa, but I've talked to people all across the country as I've shared with them the design and the building, and it's very, very like I said, it's revered already from the standpoint of design and structure and just usability of the space. So I'll stop and I'll let people ask questions or with our comments you're hearing or whatever. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Any questions? Okay, it doesn't look like.
Will, I owe you, if you're on, Will, I owe you a tour of the Marion YMCA. I apologize, I haven't gotten to that yet, but if anybody else would like that, the old Y, Will wanted to go in and see it, I'm happy to let you do that. I can set up a time to do it with anyone that would like to.
Thanks, Bob. I appreciate that. I'll get in touch with you.
I got your cell phone number. Jensen gave it to me and I haven't got back to you. So I apologize for that with everything going on.
Okay, I don't think we have any questions for you, Bob. Thank you.
Thank you very much all for your time.
Okay, that looks like it concludes our presentations. Moving into the consent agenda. There are no items marked on page 2. Any questions on page 2 or 3? No items marked. Page 4, same, no items marked, or page 5, still consent agenda. Any questions? Okay, that puts us page 6, E16, resolution approving change order number 1 with Acme Electric regarding the revised floor boxes associated with the Marion Library project. The amount of $15,131. Is that Mike?
I believe the architect is going to sign on and discuss that.
Okay, thank you.
I'm here.
Second.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay. During our submittal review process, you're going to actually see 2 of these that came through. These are more elective change orders that you can either choose or not choose. We still have floor boxes in the library either way. When we were putting together the documents, we selected a few things that we thought would save some money or we value engineered out. We did this because we thought we were coming pretty close up to that project budget and we wanted to make sure that we brought a project in under budget. However, going back through the submittals, wanted to bring this to not only the library's attention, but to the city council's attention that there might be a better option. Several of the floor boxes that we specified, actually probably a majority of them are surface mounted floor boxes. So you plug directly down into them and the plug sticks up above the floor. I think everyone's probably seen those type of floor boxes. The other type that we have on the project is actually a recessed box that goes into the floor. So you open a lid and you plug into, and then you can close the lid, and it's basically a much better product overall, but it is also a much more expensive product. So what we asked Bush was to price out basically changing about a little over half of the floor boxes to the, I would say, a better or more, we feel that they end up being more durable over time. They're easier to use. They present less of an impediment in the floor. They're more flush to the floor. They don't kind of stick up that little 1/4 inch. In addition, we did add in, I think, 2 floor boxes and added in a couple of locations for data drops, but those are really a minor aspect of this change order. The change order is really the labor and the products to change the floor boxes before they're installed to this, what I would call a much more durable and long-lasting floor box. So before we approve the submittals, and once floor boxes are installed, you don't really want to go back and change those out. We thought we'd at least bring this to the attention of the library and the city council.
Sean, did you say that was for all floor boxes or just some of them?
There's still a few of the surface mounted ones, but they're in locations that wouldn't become hazards. They're under built-in furniture, or there's just a few, not many. Almost, over 90% of them would be the preferred type, the recessed box.
Thank you. Questions? Okay, it doesn't look like we have any questions on this change order. Then we have a E17, a change order for Peak Construction Group regarding the Marion Library project. Looks like doors in the amount of $9,739.54.
So this one and the next one are actually together. This is a change order amount. This is actually a credit. So I don't know if that was relayed, but similar to the floor boxes, we're reviewing doors, and during the design, we made a decision to basically do wood doors throughout the project. We did have several aluminum doors that would fit in with the aluminum storefront for study rooms, mainly just study rooms and program rooms, areas where they're going to get a lot of heavy use. And we were interested in more durability when we originally designed it. We switched to wood doors because they were a cost savings to the project. What you're seeing here is the savings that you would get. You would get a change order credit of $9,700 to remove, I think I counted them up, it's about 20 wood doors. And the next change order would be to add in, and I believe that's around $32,000, to change them into aluminum doors. The 9,000 would be minused off the 32, so it'd be coming in around 22,000. I have to do quick math here, but you're taking the doors as a one contractor, you're putting them into a different contractor is really what these two change orders are. Aluminum doors don't usually expand or contract over time. They're all interior to the building, so they don't tend to warp or to take on moisture. Generally, they're more durable. They're a little easier on the hardware. Selfishly, I think they're a little bit more aesthetically pleasing with the aluminum frame storefront that we're doing in the building. But I wanted you to understand this change order is also elective. It is not required. You have doors. You're still getting doors. We're not taking away any doors. We're not adding any doors. We're basically recommending a change to what we feel is a more durable product. Something that we originally were proposing, but based on just feeling that we're a little close on the budget, we changed kind of at towards the end of the project to make sure we came in appropriately, and wanted to bring this to your attention before we sign off on this and proceed forward. So,
Questions on the doors or the change orders? Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, my question is not specifically on this one, but I know in a project like this, when you come in under budget, all of a sudden you're going to start looking at a number of other elective alternatives. And so my question is, I get concerned taking these one at a time, a month here and a month there. So I'm going to be asking that in the future that we need to find a way to take a look at the number of elective options that are being considered, looking at the totality of that, looking at the prioritization of that. So I can take these one at a time. Each one sounds good. This sounds good. And all of a sudden, you've added another $250,000 into the project, and the cost savings that was there in the beginning is eroded. So I'm concerned, not necessarily about each one we're talking about tonight, but collectively, how we may be managing this down the road.
Well, I can respond to that. We've been really trying to get through this chain, the submittals, as fast as we can as they come in from Bush Construction, and I'd say that we're pretty well through a majority of them. There's not, I don't want to back myself into a corner here, but these seem to be the two that stuck out to us out of all the ones that we're going through. That's why they're coming to you. We're trying not to piecemeal them to you. But obviously if something would come up in the future, I don't want to not come back to you because I said I wouldn't. But I completely agree with your statement that we're not here. That's why we tried to combine these two together, the floor boxes and the doors, so that we weren't coming to you over and over again.
Okay, so is there a current list out there of other elective options that are being considered, and what possibly is the total dollars of those? Is that something that needs to be looked at now, or is that list getting shortened already?
Yeah, right now I'm actually have all the submittals open that I have personally. There isn't any in there that I'm looking at that we didn't try to reduce finishes. We tried to keep a very high level of finish in the building. It was really these specific areas that seemed to be, you know, two things that we focused on purposefully in the design to reduce costs. So I can't see anything off the top. I can't see anything in the list that I have in front of me that would add to elective change orders.
Also, this is Kelly. Can I add something to that, Steve?
Sure.
Okay, just so council knows as well, we do have building meetings every 2 weeks in which there is library board representation there. James and myself are there. And so as we are kind of going through different phases of the project, we are discussing those options, and the library, Sally on behalf of the library board, and I guess James and myself on behalf of staff are also recommending the ones that we would like to take that need to go through a change order for council. So I just don't want anybody to think that this is the only place that it's going.
Kelly, my comment is not necessarily the process. I know your group has been reviewing them, and we would not be seeing it unless your group has already recommended it. My group is, you know, I don't want to be surprised by a lot more of these coming
Correct.
through without having a list of those right now and saying, oh, gee, we're already considering another $200,000 that may be coming later. So I just don't want to be surprised.
Yes, and thank you for that, Steve. Thanks for looking out for that.
Grant.
Yeah, two comments. I think maybe part of the concern that Steve is raising could be satisfied by, and I know how projects go. Sean, you are saying today, gee, I kind of feel maybe that there aren't any big change orders out on the horizon, but this is a complex project, and so therefore that assumption can change pretty quickly. What I would just recommend, and maybe Kelly, this is part of the work that you're all doing, is maybe you know, just periodically, once a month as this unfolds, we're given sort of a high level summary sheet of where expenditures are versus the total project budget. And then that way, Sean, if you have a negative surprise that crops up on your desktop, at least we'll have a frame of reference to know where we're sitting and how to consume that. So I guess maybe a recommendation there. The second comment that I would make, and specific to this consent agenda item E17, I'm putting my citizen observer hat on, and it isn't obvious in how this resolution is worded that this is a credit of $9,739.54. I think it ought to be reworded to be clear. It's a credit, or it's an additional expenditure.
Yeah, we'll amend the title for Thursday.
Okay, thank you.
All right, other questions? Just to follow that line of discussion, so it looks like we're increasing the cost with these three change orders, a little under $40,000 on the project. So what does that mean to our overall project at this point?
So we did, after we bid package 2, we did make a slight increase into the contingency amount for the project. We did that just, you know, for good practice, make sure that we were safe, and that, you know, possibly as we go through the submittals, looking at places where maybe we saved money, and maybe we can see if those features would have some benefit to putting back into the project. So overall, I don't believe that we've, you know, this wouldn't even come anywhere close. I believe that additional contingency was of 100,000 was added. Again, that's your money. That's not dedicated to anything specific in the project. So this, in our mind, would be coming out of that. You know, it's all one pot of contingency money, but in general, these two change orders would be coming out of that pot of money, that a little additional that we put in there to try to address specifically these things.
So about $40,000 is coming out of that additional $100,000 that we put in contingency is what you're saying.
Yes, sorry. Yep.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Sean. Thank you, Mike. Mike. Doesn't look like we have any more items marked on page 6. Questions? Page 7 through F8. Okay, it looks like we've got F9 marked, recommending approval of Matt Key's first edition final plat to Lynn County located at 4900 Albernet Road, Lynn County, Iowa, Integrity Custom Homes.
Yes, this is an item we wouldn't normally have on the city council's agenda for discussion, but just wanted to make everybody clear. This is the county plat surrounded on 3 sides by the city limits highlighted there in kind of in purple. Subject properties in red. Normally when we have a county split like this, we do require annexation to the city. And right now we've received the annexation request from the owner and the contract purchaser. And we're going to hold that annexation request application until a later date to allow us to use it potentially in future annexations to the south. There's quite a bit of land down there. And we can use it as part of an 80-20 annexation request to make it voluntary. This is a 2-lot plat. It's just going to split the farmstead off in the balance of the property, and the balance of the property will be incorporated into a development to the west, Silver Rock Estates, which the city council will be seeing in a few months. But again, we just want to make the council aware that normally, you'd have an annexation request with this, and we'd be acting on that. But in this situation, again, we're just going to hold the annexation until a later date to allow us more flexibility for additional annexations in the area.
Okay, thanks, Dave. Questions? Okay, it doesn't look like we have any questions on that. Looking at page 8, moving on to the regular agenda. A1 through A3 is not marked. Any questions on those? Okay, we'll jump into A4, public hearing regarding the proposed fiscal year 21-22 budget.
Good evening, City Council.
Hello.
In tonight's presentation, it will be a brief overview of the final budget that will be coming forward before City Council in 2 days on Thursday. There'll be a little fuller presentation for the public hearing to make sure that any residents that are listening to it can get that full presentation view. But we wanted to make sure to give a high-level overview to City Council tonight. Next slide. Thank you. First, regarding property taxes, wanted to remind City Council that the property tax rate up for adoption on Thursday will be a rate of 14.19976. This will be a reduction from the rate of 14.21502 adopted last year, and which was a reduction from the rate of 14.22338 in 2020. So that will be the 3rd straight year of either a flat property tax levy or a reduction in the property tax levy. Contextually, what this means is based upon the rollback, and once again, I won't belabor the rollback piece of it and what it means, but due to the rollback, that means that the average property tax, or the property taxes paid per $100,000 of assessed valuation, would increase from 2021 of $783 to $801 in 2022. So an increase of $18 year over year per $100,000 of assessment. Like to note that that is still a reduction of $9 from where we were at in 2020, and only $4 more than what we had in place in 2018. So it's nestled around that realm for the past 4 years. We primarily talk about the residential impact of that rate, but I also wanted to note there's commercial aspects to it. Based on the property tax assessment set up in Iowa, as many other states, there's different tiers based upon the property tax classifications. But because the commercial rate is not, and industrial rate is not decreasing, but stays flat at 90%, that will be a decrease of $1 year over year. So it is a true decrease for them, as well as for the multi-residential, because theirs is decreasing each year by 3.75%. that will be a decrease of $54 per $100,000. So contextually, a slight increase on residential with a decrease on commercial industrial as well as multi-residential. Next slide, please. So for the budget priorities, there's kind of 4 pillars that we looked at this year. And just have one slide on it, so talk about it briefly, and sorry for the mystery one. Converting to PDF does interesting things at times. Investing in employees, the first one. This does include the 2.5% salary increase allowance that was presented to City Council back with the recommended budget, as well as a 6% increase for health insurance. Under funding strategic plan priorities, I'm really excited to continue to discuss this, because this is part of a signature piece in order to make sure that we have aligning our funding with the prioritization put forth by City Council to make sure that we can move forward that strategic plan over that 3-year horizon. So that will have 4 new positions directly tied to those strategic plan priorities, 2 other ones that are indirectly tied, which I'll talk to in a minute, on the maximizing technology and investments. This is one of the areas as well. As the city continues to grow, technology is one of the ways that we continue to innovate in the services we provide. And we've seen with the through COVID this year, I like to think of it, it's a technology first response, especially for resident questions, whether it be calling on a phone or looking online. So really, I like to think the front door of City Hall currently is the internet space or through the phone. So it's really getting us to make sure that we fully maximize not only how we currently provide services, but also how we move forward in that space with the current systems that we depend on to provide services on a daily basis. And then lastly, the enhancing service delivery. One of the areas in there is we saw this year with the derecho, the increases for building permits and permitting staff. So there's additional staff added there in order to make sure that we can respond to the increased demand that we've had over time, but also punctuated this year with the increases, as well as some other smaller initiatives that we expect to receive significant gains in the departments that they're impacting. Next slide, please. Mr. Simprich beforehand, Mr. Derecho this year, he talked about the reforestation plan, also to me, an exciting investment strategy as we look to move forward. But the other side of the derecho is making sure that we pay for a number of the services that have already been provided, with the city very quickly moving to remove the debris out of the right of way. And I should say that the trees as well as the debris to residents. We expect, or we're estimating that bill to be around 6.5 million. We're hoping in the next 3 to 6 months to have a finer estimate on that. But the FY22 budget does have set aside $3 million in order to pay that down, which would leave us only 54% of that total share for future years. As previously mentioned to City Council, once we understand where we're at next year, we'll be able to also look to see how that financing plan going forward would look on a multi-year basis, which is how we're looking to pay it down over a multi-year period. Next slide. Regarding capital projects overall is one of the significant increases in our total budget year over year. A lot of time is spent to look at talking about the general fund, but if you look across all funds, capital projects line item increase 70%. One of the big notes in that is following up for the derecho. So we have 6.7 million expected in FY22, which would be finalizing some of those services. We'll find out by the end of the year if that will hit this fiscal year or the next one, but that's how the budget is currently built. And then secondly, we have some signature projects. Just previous to this, talking about the new library and the efforts underway there. This next year, I think, has about $10 million in library expenditures moving forward. And I should mention of that, the capital campaign portion for the library of $3 million is estimated for next year's budget. So in addition to the library, we also have the extension of 6th Avenue, 7th Avenue streetscape, and the continuation of the work for the public service facilities. Next slide, please. So regarding the proprietary funds, First, starting with the ones that are flat fees or the no changes, sanitary sewer replacement, stormwater management, as well as the urban forest funds will be flat year over year. But we are recommending an increase in sanitary sewer of 7% on the variable rate, which would take it, would increase it about $2 a month for the average bill in the city. And similarly, we're recommending an increase of $1.25 a month on the solid waste side. This is to respond to some of the increased costs over time with sanitary sewer solid waste to make sure that we're remaining the appropriate fiscal balance for those funds, since the total dollars brought into the funds need to make sure that they support the ongoing activities of those proprietary funds. Next slide, please. Which brings us to a high-level summary, kind of in 5 points, and just in summary, that next year's property tax rate is a 1.5 penny reduction, third year of a reduction or a flat rate. That would come out to $810 per $100,000 of assessed valuation, and as previously mentioned, is $9 less than 2020. The strategic plan funding alignment across the 4 pillars that we looked at, it will add 6 full-time positions to the city, addressing all the 5 focus areas that City Council had set forth for us as a city to focus on over the next 3 years. In improving service delivery and infrastructure, as previously mentioned, there's significant capital investments within the city. So we're proud to be able to continue to move forward those initiatives, given COVID as well as derecho. On the proprietary fund fiscal health, just mentioned the rate increases, but also wanted to mention the water budget is part of the city's budget as well. They presented this year, and one of the areas that they have slated for this next year is a $2 million water infrastructure investment that is in the budget. And then the other piece wanted to make sure we mentioned is an important solid waste study to understand the current operations and what are some of the opportunities moving forward as the city continues to grow, and we determine what that provision of services look like in the next decade and beyond. And then lastly, the derecho cleanup. And one of the talking points that we've been looking to utilize is for the 6.5 million that we are estimating to be the city share, this comes out to $483 a household. So what that means is through the taxes collected by the city and for the various funds that are being paid, or they're helping pay down this debt, residents, this is the per resident cost, but we are not increasing costs by this amount, meaning this has been absorbed through the financial planning done over the various years beforehand in order to move this forward. So we're excited about the budget in FY22. And next slide, if you could. Oh, forgot one more thing. So excited that in 2 more days, we're going to be up here talking about it. Again, having the formal hearing, giving the public an opportunity to ask any questions if they might. So far, I have not received any myself personally. With that, take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Yes, Grant.
Could you back up to the summary slide? Yeah, that one. Great. Thank you. Zach, so under the proprietary fund fiscal health category, the 7% rate increase sanitary sewer and solid waste, are those part of that increase is externally induced by others, right? Solid waste agency and water treatment plant?
I'll talk about them both differently because they both have some different cost pressures.
And I'm not asking it very well, but what I want to just tease out here is, and I think we should be sensitive to, is, you know, what drivers are internal to us versus what drivers are external to us.
Yeah. Great question. Under the sanitary sewer, the majority of our costs for sanitary sewer would be borne by the contract we do have with Cedar Rapids in order for those water treatment contracts. From what we budgeted to 20 to 21, there's a significant increase. Sorry, I don't have it in my notes today, those exact figures, but that's one of the primary factors that's moving on the sanitary sewer side. One of the other areas I also wanted to mention is we went out for revenue bonds in FY20 in order to move forward the public services facility. Part of the revenue bonds also make sure that we have a a covenant in there to make sure that we have a certain amount of fund balance set aside on an operating basis on an annual basis. So that's also a new component. I think it adds about another 42,000 a year that we have to make sure that we have in additional revenue. So that would be another increase that we would have borne by those funds as well, to make sure that we have that that funding in place per those covenants. But the sanitary sewer contract is the primary driver, in addition to our annual increases, which on salaries 2.5%, 6% on health and insurance rates there. And then the solid waste, these are borne by one area on our revenue side. We also did get a decrease this next year because of the recycling market. We previously received about $60,000 in additional revenue from recycling. We no longer expect to receive that going forward, just because of how that market has changed over time. So that's a decrease in the revenue side. We've also seen an increase over time on the cost, or while the cost has stayed relatively the same on the tipping fees for our garbage, our garbage amount, our tonnage is increasing over time too. So it's hitting those pieces, the factors for additional salaries of staff that are moving forward, but we are not asking, or there's no recommendations for additional staff in solid waste, nor are there in sanitary sewer for this next year. So those would be the primary drivers, as well as the financing pieces, to make sure that they're sufficient in there for this next year. Yeah, but no, great question, because we want to make sure that those are sufficiently, the revenue is sufficient to cover the ongoing costs for those funds.
Other questions? Okay, thanks, Zach.
Yeah. And if I might, I just wanted to give a quick little preview and put Terrell on the spot. He mentioned he might be able to get out to the wonderful world of the internet that lives outside of this domain of the next slide. Yeah, and what it is to give a quick preface is this year the city of Marion internally, was we were looking at budgets, we utilized a tool called Balancing Act. It's somewhat of an open source tool in government that allows you to do budget simulations, and we're utilizing it in order to discuss different budget proposals internally to staff, to try to vet and understand some of the implications of investments, and understanding that there's trade-offs when you make a budget. City Council understands this very well. You can only support so much on an ongoing basis. One of the benefits of this tool is it also has something called a taxpayer receipt. And what the taxpayer receipt allows you to do is allows you to, cool, perfect timing, Tara. It allows you to model an estimate of what the implications are for the taxes for the average resident, or Marion resident. So we're going to say, in today's scenario, Terrell just bought a house in Marion. So congratulations, Terrell. We'll let you know what your mortgage is, and I'm your realtor, so I'm expecting my 3.5%. Sorry, Will. I was able to get to him first. So what a resident would do is they would say, if they own a home, because once again, the property taxes, they put the assessment value. And actually, we didn't get your house that expensive. I'm sorry, Terrell. Based upon your multiple houses you own, you bought one for $100,000. It makes the math very easy too, as we're looking at things. We won't add any more houses, and you can view your property tax receipt to let you know. I'm still getting together the final categories for this, but I want to show City Council how it can be utilized with the public, and we're excited about contextualizing the budget a little bit better. Amber does this in her annual report, which is a 1-year look back, or actually a 1.5 year. She's just getting out the report coming soon for 2020. This would be then projecting forward in 2022, but allows us to show what is the cost for the various categories in there. So once again, as Lon likes to tell me, is he gets phone calls from residents at times saying, what is the cost of services, and why have taxes increase or decrease, or what are they funding? This tool allows to talk about what is the cost for each of those lines that we have broken out in our budget. For example, in this case, and as I mentioned, these numbers are going to move a little bit, but in the police example, $238. This is the annual cost per $100,000 of assessment. If you have a home that's higher, you put your figure in there, and it will calculate the dollars therein, and then how much you're paying. And once again, this is 24/7 police support, as well as fire. the communication center or emergency 911, and so on and so forth. So we're excited about it to be just an additional tool that can be utilized by residents to understand what's built into the budget, what are the dollars being tied to in the city, so that there can be kind of our fuller understanding of how those our property tax dollars are being utilized in the city. Also, as you go down to the bottom, it has a total in there. To 810, if you go down a little bit further, Terrell, or 801 in there. It also gives the opportunity to provide too that the city of Marion, on average, you're only paying about 35% of your total tax bill. City of Marion receives 35%. The additional 65% is going to county, is going to school districts, and potentially other taxing jurisdictions. So it's an education tool to let people know that though we do receive a portion, it's not 100% of it, and hopefully a better communication tool to understand the cost of government and also the benefits. And with that, I'd gladly take any questions or any feedback City Council might have about utilizing a tool like this in the public.
Go ahead, Steve.
So you're saying this is going to be out there, is out there, or will be out there in the near future?
It will be out there. I want to make sure, one, that we're wait till the budget is adopted, but afterwards looking to have that available for the public to look at.
Okay.
Correct. Right now it's operational. Right after the meeting, I will take it back down because yeah, limited time only.
Interesting tool, right?
Yeah.
It provides some transparency, I think, that folks, I mean, it's just easy, right? So that's great. Anybody else have questions, comments? Yeah, Randy.
Zach, will there be a hyperlink, excuse me, will there be a hyperlink to these to click on to drill down what the explanation of these would be to the general consumer using this?
Great question. There'll be descriptions of the different subcategories, for example, administration, finance, legislative, what's in there. That's one of the areas too, looking to build out over time, since this is a newer tool. Cities that have opened this up and have kind of a higher maturity into it have really broadened it based upon, one, what they invest into it, and then secondly, over time, as you get questions from residents, it really informs of, oh, that's a great question. Why don't we put it in the tool itself? It does allow for pictures to be put in there, as well as a narrative. And they're really building out the tool. This is just one component of the tool. There's also a simulation side of it that we've been talking about. How might that be something we would open up to the public at a later date? But really the first stage of our public engagement is to look internally and make sure as a staff that we fully understand how a tool like this could be utilized, its benefits. And there's also mirroring the city of Raleigh is doing a similar approach. They decided before go external, let's start internal, make sure we build that infrastructure, and then you can open up, because that conversation, want to make sure that we fully understand, are fully ready to receive input from residents. And when we do, how are we going to continue that conversation rather than just an empty space that we're not moving within. So we're being mindful of that.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Zach.
Congratulations, Sarah.
Okay, A6, resolution approving award of $7,000 to Willis Stady Emergency Shelter, $6,500 to Marion Cares, and $6,500 to Waypoint Services as part of the Civil Rights Commission Low and Moderate Income Housing Assistance Grant. We have somebody with the Civil Rights Commission with us.
Yeah, good evening, City Council. My name is Fred Brown. I am the Vice Chair of the Marion Civil Rights Commission, and I will provide a quick overview of how we arrived to the recommendations for awarding the housing grant. So the grant itself, proposals went out back in the early December timeframe for requests for proposals, and our organization received 5 proposals from 5 different organizations: Willis Stady, Marion Cares, Waypoint, ASAC, and Captain McCauley. Our group met mid-February timeframe to evaluate the proposals based on the criteria of impact to the community and the different types of demographics that will be served within the city of Marion, and which ones would have the greatest impact. As a result of going through that rubric and determining exactly where to best utilize the funds, the group determined that we would award $7,000 to Willis Stady, $6,500 to Marion Cares, and $6,500 to Waypoint. We took that recommendation to the Civil Rights Commission 2 weeks ago and was approved. And so we're just here today providing this recommendation to the City Council to approve the funds as well.
Thanks, Fred. Any questions? Okay, thank you. Looks like A7, resolution in opposition of Iowa Bill SF 252 that would partially invalidate lawful source of income ordinances requiring landlords to accept HUD federal housing choice vouchers.
So what this is, sorry, Amal, I'll do the introduction, then you can provide some context. The city of Marion, when we adopted our civil rights ordinance, has a provision in it that prevents landlords from discriminating against tenants because of the source of income that they have. And this bill popped up this year. We've been keeping it on our radar screen a little bit. It's not the first year that this has been proposed through the Iowa legislature, but this year it seems to have more legs. And so we're taking for us what is a little bit of an extraordinary step to come to the city council and ask you to actually pass a resolution that would oppose this bill. Prior city councils have resisted attempts locally to remove this from our ordinance. And in prior years with the state legislature, the folks that wanted to advance this bill were not successful, but there's only 3 communities in Iowa that actually have this on the books. So it's definitely targeted towards us. But I think when I'm putting in a phone call or sending in an email, or even when they're hearing from one of you as an elected official, that's different than knowing that the entire community is in opposition to this proposal. And that's what the resolution would do, is be an indication that you as a policymaking entity are opposed to seeing this legislation advance forward. It's just a much stronger statement from the community than simply, say, like me making a phone call or sending an email. Anything additional, Amal?
I just learned that on Monday, bill passed the House and probably awaiting governor's review.
Any questions for Amal or Lon? Yes, Steve.
Yeah, question. So I understood you correctly, Lon, there's only 3 communities in the state that have this ordinance? Why are there so few that have it?
Well, first, to have a civil rights commission, you have to be over 30,000 population. So that gets you into a fairly rare stratosphere in Iowa to begin with, as far as simply the sheer number of cities that would have this. And then it was something that many of them that may have adopted a civil rights ordinance a long time ago just really haven't looked at them and updated them. When we did our civil rights ordinance, it was after the census in 2010 pushed us past the 30,000 magic number. We adopted it. It was best practice at the time to have that provision in there as well, because it was an emerging area or a more recent area of issues with surrounding civil rights.
Grant.
What problem is being potentially solved by this legislation? I guess and maybe I should just share, I've been a little troubled by this one as it's moved forward at the State House. And I think this is just one of those things that smacks a little bit of governmental overreach into local affairs. That was my opinion.
Yeah, Namal can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe in the last 5 years, we've only had one case brought to our local Civil Rights Commission that involved this, but it involved some other factors as well. And in that case, the determination was made that the incident was related to one of the other factors and not this. So I feel kind of the same way. It's a little bit of a solution in search of a problem as far as this being a major issue. That may not be the case in some of the other communities. And I don't, to be perfectly honest, I don't think there's a way in this case that you can really separate it from the fact that it would have a significant disproportionate impact on people of color in the community. If you look down the breakdown of those that receive housing vouchers, they're disproportionately represented in the housing voucher program. And if you now allow landlords to discriminate because of that factor, you're allowing them to discriminate because of color.
Other questions or comments? Okay, thank you. Okay, so A8, which I think is right related to the presentation earlier that we had, which is where probably the information resides. And we've got, is it Sam? Is it Lon? Okay.
Yeah, so with this one, as you can see, when you get a chance to look through this information, I think this is a good one to show you because that's the level of detail. This one might have a little more, but those are the types of things that the Economic Development Committee reviews when they're looking to bring recommendations to the City Council about whether or not a project has a financial gap. And it's really part of what we use when we talk about the but-for analysis, about but for the city providing assistance, that this project would not be able to proceed. And so in this case, we are recommending that based on the analysis that there is a gap of about $450,000, and we're asking that the council direct us to negotiate an agreement with them regarding tax incentives. I think in this case, we would look like we have on other residential projects to do it through tax abatement rather than tax increment financing. Administratively, it's easier, and especially on projects like this where early year cash flows can be critical to their success. Tax abatement is simply not having a tax bill. So you're not having to collect it, pay it, send it off to the county, and then get it back. So you don't have to cash flow those dollars over the life of the agreement.
Okay, questions? Oh, go ahead.
Not necessarily a question, but I've tried twice now during the meeting to open that in the agenda, and it won't work. So maybe if it could get emailed to us.
I can try that. I had it open on my computer, but we can try it. I can email it out. It's fine.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Looks like there's nothing else marked on page 9. Any questions about any of those items? Okay, page 10. Looks like engineering E1, a public hearing regarding the Marion Public Library building project, furnishings and case goods bid package.
So I'm going to hand this off to Sean Kelly as well.
Hello again. So the next round of bids that we engaged in for the library was for furniture, and you're seeing the results here. We actually broke the furniture up into about, I think there are 6, I'd have to double check that. I believe there's 6 total packages. A few of them are going to be direct purchase through the government purchase agreement. What you're seeing here are the 3 packages that we put out for public bid. So the next 3 packages will go on the government direct purchase program that Iowa and Marion participate in. The first package we call general furnishings. This is a pretty big package. It includes a lot of different things. But really what this, the main focus of this package, bid package 1, was to put every type of furniture that can be procured publicly, doesn't have any restrictions on it. The goal is to get as many furniture vendors interested in that package and bid on it. We also wanted to make it a substantial package so that people would really be interested in bidding it and provide opportunities to a variety of different people. Bid package 2, case goods. Case goods would be any sort of millwork or item that's related to more woodworking. This bid package 2 is mainly included end panels for shelving. So you have the metal shelving, and then you need to put a piece of end panel on the end. That's really what bid package 2 was. And then bid package 3 is custom furnishing. There is a few interactive children's based furniture items that are, custom made, custom built, and really geared towards those younger kids. And that was bid package 3. All 3 of these were put out for public bid. We received a series of different bids on each package. I think bid package 1 had 3 bidders. Bid package 2 and bid package 3, I think, only had 1 bidder that put in for it overall. It seemed after a review of the bids, we found that Library Furniture International actually put a bid in on all three packages, was the lowest qualified bidder.
Okay, thank you, Sean. Questions? Yes, Steve.
Yeah, Sean, how does that, those total bids compared to what the, your estimate was on the project?
Yeah, so right now we're a few $1,000s over, and I would say that is only a few thousand. I think it's around 5 or less. We have the overall furniture was estimated at $1.2 million. The bulk of it being system like office furniture and shelving. So those are currently out. We feel that we have a healthy estimate in there for those packages. We did end up actually putting a few more pieces in that bid package 1 that I think actually pushed a little over our estimate. We moved them out of other packages and wanted to get a public bid on them. So overall, we feel real confident that we're not, we're within a really good margin for being about 35% of the furniture budget. So bid package 2 and bid package 3 were under budget, and bid package 1 was about $20,000 over. So it bounced out to only a few $1,000s between the 3.
Other questions? Okay, thanks. Thank you, Sean. Looks like E3, motion to receive, file, and discuss an application for future major streets oversizing cost reimbursements in association with Rookwood Estates 3rd edition.
Yeah, so I think this is the third request that we've gotten so far for this fiscal year. So Rookwood Estates is on the east side of town, north of 151. And so this is over width request of wider than our 26-foot wide street and thicker than our 7-inch requirement. And then also for the side path or the trail that parallels the street.
Okay. Questions for Mike? Okay, thanks, Mike. All right, we don't have anything else on page 10. Let's see, we've got E7, resolution approving a change order number 7 with Peterson Contractors regarding the CMAR Phase 3 project. Assuming is that you, Mike?
Yep. So we're again talking about that center pier. If council recalls, we came to you with several options. The option that was chosen was to completely remove that center pier because of the concrete spalling and the hollowness of it. When they went to remove the center pier, it appeared that they poured concrete back in the day all the way to the existing bedrock. And we didn't know how deep that was. So we actually had to get Terracon, a subcontractor of ours, out there to drill to find out how much farther this foundation continued to go. Luckily, it was only a couple more feet to go, and it wasn't going to be more than we thought it was going to be since we have driven the pile so far down. And so there was that added cost of almost $40,000 to figure all that out during the demo, to figure out how far we actually had to remove it so that we could get the proper foundation in there for the new pier. And there's lots of documentation there for City Council in the package.
Questions for Mike? Okay, thank you, Mike. F1 is marked. Approving a resolution approving a task order 1 for the Marion Airport Consultant Services Agreement with HDR Engineering.
So this is a proposed agreement with HDR Engineering to bring in someone who's a library specialist, or library's been on the brain tonight, an airport specialist, to work with us on the next stage of evolution for the Marion Airport. There's been significant interest in wanting to conduct an economic analysis of the airport in light of proposed improvements, but we also realized that we had a need to bring some form and structure to the order of the safety items that needed to be addressed in the CIP, and then to lean on some professional help in evaluating the land donation proposal that was brought before the City Council. So since that land donation proposal was brought forward, we would view that analysis and recommendation to the council as one of the critical steps to do the economic analysis, because an economic analysis with the city owning that much property versus what we have right now would be significantly different. So the starting point is going to have a big impact on what the overall economic study looks like. So this would encompass that and allow us to bring in this gentleman from HDR to assist us. He's worked with more than 40 airports across the state of Iowa. He's one of the acknowledged specialists in this area and has worked at everything from really tiny municipal airports all the way up to the Polk County Airport in Ankeny. So he's been involved in development of new airports, reconstruction of existing, and just really has a wealth of experience, has seen what works and what does not. So I think we have a lot of confidence that he can help guide us through this process.
Questions? Thank you.
I do, Colette.
Oh, sure, go ahead, Renee.
Thanks. I have a couple questions. So when we talked about the budget several months ago, I had asked about a list of different consultants, fees, and projects that we were currently running. Was this one of those? I don't recall seeing this $50,000 for this particular service. Is this somewhere in our budget?
Mike can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but the approach to the way that we put it in the budget was to put in an allowance for several different projects, not knowing which one would be completed first. So the CIP does have a budget line item in it, but I'm not sure how much of that was aligned to one specific contract or a specific project.
Okay. And then my second question is, I don't know if it's on a monthly basis, but I do know on a recurring basis, we pay for consulting related to the airport from another professional group. That's right, correct? And what's that for, just in general?
Yeah, I think the contract you're referring to is with Anderson Bogert as a consulting engineering firm. So they review physical improvements, take a look at things like the placement of the beacon, but that's specifically to design the engineering side of things versus the planning side of things and reviewing the economics of it.
Okay, so then the third piece that when I first saw this that came across my mind was a recent presentation that we had from a private citizen with slides and everything about the hopeful future for Marion Airport. And so I don't remember exactly in what context, but I think it was Steve when we were talking about the airport kind of recently, who, we were trying to figure out what could our ROI be on all of this investment should we go forward. And I thought we had talked about getting other people in on paying for exactly this kind of exploratory feature. I mean, I'm looking at the summary on the agenda memo, and it said that the scope of work will be to assist staff with key airport services, administrative assistance, including governance, establishment of standards, and providing on-call services as needed. So to me, this is going farther than I'm comfortable going, not knowing. I think everybody knows my stance. I know we've got to do what we need to do to keep it safe. I don't know that I want to grow this, particularly if we're the only entity putting in the exploratory money to find out if it's going to be worth it. So I guess my question is, am I off base here? And if so, please help me get on base. Otherwise, I'm probably out for Thursday on this going forward and things related to this particular scope of service.
There's actually several items I think that are encompassed underneath what we'd be seeking assistance from this company to do, Renee. So for example, one of the questions that has frequently come up is what are the types of things that your FBO should be doing on a daily, weekly, monthly basis to ensure that the safety standards are being documented and that everything is being done. So this company will assist us with developing that. So we know what are their targets, what do we evaluate the FBO against. So there is a bit more to it than just the specific project that I'm talking about. We have had other members of the city council in on some of those discussions, so they've had opportunities to ask questions. I don't know if Grant or Randy would like to weigh in on Jerry, or if there's any other things they would like to see them do. But for us, this is really kind of the foundational work that we need to do on our airport to really understand, to your point, as we make improvements or any improvements that are contemplated, what would the potential return to the community be for making those investments, but also help us to understand, if the ultimate goal is going to look different than what it is in the ALP, what is the realistic goal for our airport? Where should we start and where should we stop?
Go ahead, Grant.
Yeah, Renee, I have a strong appreciation for the concern that you've expressed on multiple times. And as Lon said, Randy and I have been in on discussions, listening to the airport committee talk about all manner of concerns. As somewhat of, I'm going to claim that I'm still a newbie at this point for just a few moments. But from my vantage point, this scope of work that's being proposed for HDR is foundational and will give us a set of perspectives from which then to inform go forward decision making. The big thing that I've commented on, and I know that there's been an issue with the airport committee, are some of the fundamental safety related concerns at the airfield. What also attends to the safety related concerns is basically the rudiments of a safety management program for an operating airport. We don't have, in that particular case, we don't have a well-developed set of safety protocols, safety management, and remediation considerations that need to be built into the operating fabric for the airport. So in part, this work that HDR would be doing is going to give us that foundational understanding. Now, how we react to that is going to downstream be up, up to us with the good input from the airport committee. But I would just say that this is going to help illuminate some critical minimum must-dos in order to effectively operate the airport as it is and to inform go-forward decisions on whatever the vision might be, such as a vision that was presented by that gentleman who was from Collins Aerospace, I think is where he was from.
Yeah, that's who I was referring to. Well, so I really appreciate that, Grant, because I know that you are, you do some things related to aviation. So you have not only an appreciation, but certainly a better understanding than I do. And I know you, like Steve and Randy, have been sitting in on some of this stuff a little more. As I was looking through some of the scope of services, though, in the detailed part of the attachment, it seemed to me that there would be a benefit provided to people who provide flight training, aircraft maintenance, aircraft sales and rental. And those are things that I don't think we're planning to get in the business of. And so to me, it seemed like perhaps we should have some partners contributing to the findings that come from this study, because others who have, we're making money out there currently doing a variety of things are going to benefit from this information. And so I guess that's the only thing I'm not square on. And I do appreciate your insight on the other and Lon, what you provided. So I feel better about that, but I'm still just wondering, is it appropriate that we go it alone for the 50K, or does it make sense that some other people who maybe have interests in the findings could have some skin in the game? And that's just I defer to you, Lon, I guess, from a protocol standpoint, because we're a government entity and they're for private, but we partner a lot. And this to me seems like something we should consider doing that for if it's appropriate.
Yeah, I think for me, what it comes down to on this one is that by us being the sole funding source, they're our agent. It's not a case where someone else is putting money in and may have different goals or different expectations than we do of the vendor that's going to be providing the services. It's going to be very clear with them being our agent out there that they're looking at this with our pure interests in mind and giving us information that's best for the community to be able to make those decisions. There's just no blurring of the waters or blurring of the lines on that.
Okay, well, I love that. That's a great answer. That is a reason to just maintain control. So sorry to take all the time, everybody, but this one kind of stuck out to me tonight. So thanks everyone for the details and the patience.
That's okay. Randy.
Thank you. Renee, this is Randy. I'd like to weigh in on this one as well too, because I know we share a lot of the same concerns. Sitting in with this, with Grant and being part of these conversations and meetings that we've had, this is exactly what I've been looking for a number of years as an individual that would, or a company that'd be able to come in and help this city kind of lay out those parameters as what does it mean to have an airport. So with that being under our authority now, this company will actually, I believe, some of the hopes that I have is to help kind of set up those walls of parameters, if you will, to assist us in what does it mean to actually, operate that airport and run it, and where does it fall? What jurisdiction does it go into? What department does it go into? This company, I've been very impressed as with everyone that's been affiliated with us to have this third party look-see that has worked with other municipalities from very large scale cities all the way down to the very small and private communities that have airports or nothing more than just a flat runway, if you will. But I'm with you. I think, we've got a lot of fingers in this. We want to make sure that we're protecting ourselves, that we've got that parameter. This is for the benefit of the city. If we are taking a look at some other opportunities as far as the land and things that lay out with this, I truly feel that this will bring a lot of equity to the table in assisting us as a city. It certainly is by no means the conduit as far as growing this into something that we're not prepared for at this particular point, but I've been very impressed with what I've seen. The questions that come up, the things that we as a city should be prepared to be able to address. And I think this would be a great collaboration, if you will, safety being number one, and then kind of help us take a look at some of those opportunities that would help educate us along the way. Thank you. I just wanted to throw that in there.
Thanks, Randy. Any other questions or comments? Okay, looks like we've got one final item, resolution approving a request for demolition of a structure located at 847 8th Avenue per Marion Code 176.50. Joe Lentz.
Yes, Dr. Lenz, he's the contract purchaser of this property. I think everybody's pretty familiar with it on 8th Avenue. It's come up for sale, and Dr. Lenz has approached him and has secured a contract to purchase. Dr. Lenz owns two buildings to the east, his old practice and his new practice, Uptown Dental, I think everybody's familiar with. He would like to purchase the property and remove the structure, and for the time being, just grass the property for future expansion of parking or a new business opportunity. There's a north-south alley in that block. He'll eventually like to purchase that as well. Long-term, it will probably be a parking lot. His practice is growing pretty rapidly, and he'd like to have an area for staff parking on the site, in addition to create more parking for his former location that he now rents out. This has gone to the Planning and Zoning Commission. They have recommended approval. It did not go to the Historic Preservation Commission. It's outside of any of our local districts, so they did not review it. It is an older structure in town, but it's been a pretty neglected structure for a long time. It's really pretty. It'd be a lot of work to make into any other use other than maybe a home, and even a home would be difficult. It's been commercial for almost 30 years. To kind of revert it back. So again, he'd like to just leave it as, tear it down, leave it as a grass lot, eventually go for parking possibly, which is a conditional use, which will go through the commission and then the zoning board of adjustment ultimately. Any other additional improvements to the site would have to go through the city council if he's going to construct another building on the site or expand beyond a parking lot. That will go to the city council for review. Let's see, I think that was it. again, his immediate plans would probably be looking to tear down this spring. Part of the commission's recommendation was that he work with local organizations that could go in there and remove floorboards, any historic doors, anything that could be repurposed. There's several organizations that would do that, and they made that part of the recommendation that he work with those folks to remove what can be removed from the house prior to demolition if it's approved tonight, or if it's approved on Thursday night.
Okay, questions? Thanks, Dave. Go ahead.
Dave, this is Randy. Could you repeat again? Is it normal practice for a demolition request to come before city council if it's a non-historic building?
No, not normally. Only if it's in only if it's in the Uptown Corridor District. And this one's just on the edge of it. It's basically between 8th and 5th Avenue, from McDonald's to St. Luke's Clinic out there. So anything in that district between 5th and 8th Avenue, anything that's considered a substantial improvement, including demolition, comes to the city council.
Very good. Thank you.
Other questions? Go ahead, Will.
Just to clarify, you said demolition this spring. Is it this spring or next spring?
I looking outside, I don't see spring yet. No, it's coming this spring, 2021.
2021. Okay. Thank you.
We're all hoping for spring, right, Will? Any other questions? Okay, that brings us to the end of our work session this evening. I think we are good to go. Thank you.